Hello malt friends and welcome to my newest whiskey review where I'm going to review my favorite Laphroaig, full stop. So Laphroaig is known for its very distinct character. Laphroaig is a very smoky, it's a heavily peated whiskey, and the triple wood was actually the very first Laphroaig that I tried, and that was the day when I fell in love with whiskey from Islay with smoky whiskey. So this is a very special whiskey, and I'm going to talk about a very cool topic, which is age statement. And you might wonder why is the case that sometimes you can see on the label how old a whiskey is and sometimes you cannot find it. Well, you have to know that in Scotland, and I think also pretty much everywhere else, you can decide whether you want to put the age statement on the whiskey, so it's optional. So some distilleries do and some distilleries hide it. Is this a good or a bad thing? Well, here I see two different things. So first of all, there are distilleries who have a good reason to, so to say, hide the age statement, and there are the distilleries who basically hide it because the whiskey is just super young. So I have a pretty long cheat sheet here because I want to cover a lot of things and I don't want to forget anything. So yeah, the Laphroaig. Let me talk about this wonderful expression of the distillery. So the Loire is a non-age statement whiskey, so we do not know the age. At least it's not stated on the label, but we actually know because the distillery manager, actually the former distiller manager John Campbell, shared the recipe for this whiskey, and they use 6 casks to produce the Loire, and these 6 casks include, so there is a 21-year-old ex-bourbon maturation or ex-bourbon cask. And according to John Campbell, this gives the whiskey some fruitiness, but more like exotic fruitiness, and also a lot of character because 21-year-old is already pretty mature whiskey. Second cask is a 10-year Oloroso sherry cask, and it is a full maturation. And you have to know that Oloroso sherry is pretty intense, so 10 year is a lot if it's a full maturation, and this gives this jammy fruitiness, so a different kind of fruitiness and also a lot of sweetness to the whiskey. The third cask is an 8-year-old ex-bourbon cask, and the 8-year-old is essential because this is where you get that peaty kick, the smokiness to the whiskey. You have to know that the smoky whiskey, the older, the less prominent the smoke is going to be. So in order to be true to their name and give this smoky character to the whiskey, it is essential to include also a younger cask. The fourth cask is 9-year-old Coulter cask. So the Coulter cask is, as the name suggests, quarter of the size of a normal cask. And this gives a lot of woody and dry elements to the whiskey. And Laphroaig is also has an expression, you can see it there, the Coulter cask, which is extremely woody. It's very, very interesting. I love it personally. So there is this 9-year-old Coulter cask, and fifth cask is an 11-year-old European oak cask. So we don't know the what was the previous content of the cask, but we know that it's European oak. And as you have seen in the second video, I guess, European oak and American oak are very different types of oak. So this European oak gives floral notes and also some freshness, but I also believe some spiciness to the whiskey. And finally, there is a 15-year-old ex-bourbon cask, which basically gives body and a very nice texture, a very nice mouthfeel to the whiskey. So you can see that there are many, many casks and they are blended together, but this is still a single malt because by definition, single malt has to be from one single distillery, and it is from one single distillery, but they blend many different types of casks. So now you saw that from 8 years old, there is, starting from 8 years, they put also some percentage from the 21-year-old casks. And by law, if you wanted to put an age statement on this whiskey, that would be 8 years. Now I can tell you that this whiskey is pretty expensive, and if someone has put 8 years on this whiskey, many people would overlook it because they would be like, oh, it's just 8 years old, it's pretty expensive, why would I buy this? Because and they would be missing so much, you know, because you can see that this is just one portion, but by law you are required to put always the youngest component on the label. This is required by law. So yeah, this is something to keep in mind. So I'm really happy that they don't put an age statement on this. You can always check the age, and they don't put it there because they don't want you to know how old the whiskey is. It's just psychology in a way. So yeah, let me review this whiskey. So Laphroaig, as I said, they produce very smoky whiskey, and this is also true to that. But in terms of smokiness, it's a little bit less than, for example, the 10-year-old. That's a classic, or also the quarter cask or the triple wood. And this whiskey is one of my favorite whiskeys, not just from Laphroaig, but in general, because it's just so complex. It has several layers, and here I always distinguish 3 different layers. The first one is, surprisingly, that it's sweet. So when I taste it, it's very sweet, unusually sweet for a Laphroaig or for a smoky whiskey. That's the first layer. Below that, you get right away the smokiness, which is strong, but in terms of Laphroaig, little bit below the usual. And the third one is this very nice spicy woody notes, and it's very dry. And these layers change, so they come, in my opinion, in this order, and they change, and the finish is extremely long. This is a very intense whiskey. This is a very super interesting whiskey. Even my girlfriend liked it, and that's something. So yeah, I pretty much said everything, but let me just still review it here in front of the camera. Yeah, so first you get right away smoke, but the smoke is turned down. You get the sweetiness. Besides the sweetness, there is the fruitiness. So it's a kind of a fruity sweetness. It's also fresh. It's also floral. It's actually a very nice nose. And let me taste it now. Oh yeah, every time. This is just huge. So this is super intense. These layers, the finish, the intensity. By the way, this whiskey is bottled at 48% ABV. It's natural color and unchill filtered. Integrity bottling. And you know, Laphroaig is very unique in a sense that the smokiness is something that you won't find anywhere else, this exact smokiness. So it's medicinal. It has these seaweed notes to it. It has these iodine, salty tones to it. It's super interesting. So this is one thing that you have to remember about Laphroaig, that it's super unique. And also, due to these seaweed tones and also these medicinal tones and aromas, you will find on the internet very interesting descriptions of this style. And here I will show you 2 quotes, or probably more, I'm not sure. One is Hungarian, and it's just super funny, and it's actually very true. And also there are the big fans, they always try to describe in a very exotic way. So pause the video and check these quotes. I think they are hilarious and actually true. So you either love this or you hate it. There is no in between with Laphroaig. So if you want to try a smoky whiskey, yeah, go ahead, shoot. You might fall in love as I did, or you will never ever drink it. You have to try it out. Yes, let me check. Oh yeah, and one more final thing for today, the history of Laphroaig. So the distillery was established in 1815, and it's one of the very few distilleries, if not the only distillery, who operated continuously without stopping production, without closing the distillery. And this is a big word. Why? Because there were wars, there were recessions, and most of the distilleries were closed and then reopened, and so on and so forth. So whiskey business is a very sensitive business. There are huge costs. It's very tricky when it comes to whiskey production, and Laphroaig was the only distillery that survived everything, including the alcohol prohibition in the US between 1920 and 1933. And guess what? Back in the days, Laphroaig was the only distillery that was allowed to legally, in the US, it was the only whiskey that could be legally imported from Scotland. And it was imported as medicine. So you could go to the pharma shop, or to your doctor, and get a subscription, because when the US people tasted it, they said that, wow, this is everything but not whiskey, because the character is just so distinct, you know, and it's really interesting. Let's put it that way. Try it for yourself. So they didn't import this as whiskey, they imported this as drugs, basically as medicine. And this was the only whiskey. Of course, illegally, that's a completely different story. But I thought you have to know this history behind this distillery, because it's unique in so many ways. And I found hilarious with this, with the alcohol prohibition. Yeah, I won't add any water to this. I tried several times with adding water. It becomes a bit sweeter. It loses this smoky kick. So actually it makes sense to try it, but I prefer this at full strength. I think it's really rewarding. It's an excellent whiskey. If it's too expensive for you, then really try the 10-year-old. That's the standard. Go to Laphroaig. And I think that's it for today. So thanks a lot for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in 2 weeks with my next whiskey review again. Take care. Bye bye.